Time now to go lights out with 2025 NASCAR Hall of Fame member Ricky Rudd. Ricky, it is so great to see you. Been way too long, man. But, man, when you finally found out, I think we all kind of knew that you had put together a Hall of Fame career. But when you finally got that call, what was it like?
Well, John, I tell you, it was kind of hard to believe that it actually happened because I was sort of involved in the Hall of Fame in the early days when they first cranked it up. I was lucky enough and honored to be able to vote on the incoming members. And then quite a few years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, I had to basically step aside because my name became active on the ballot. So I've been away from the Hall of Fame for a while, and then I watched for about 7 years, and I was down to the wire about 6 or 7 times, and to finally get elected and brought into the Hall of Fame was kind of a dream come true. Didn't not really know if it was going to happen or not.
So, Ricky, there's wins, there's championships, there's big races to win, like your Brickyard 400. But where does this stack up? I think it seems a lot of professional athletes tell us that there are wins and there are things like that, but there's just nothing quite like being in the Hall of Fame of your particular sport.
Yeah, John, I'd have to say that, when I started my career, first of all, at that time, the NASCAR Hall of Fame, did not exist at that time. Back in the mid 70s, when I was 18 years old, when I began my cup career, it didn't exist. So my goals at that time were, forget Hall of Fame. I was a young kid trying to learn how to drive a race car, and I had my hands full with that, and really never thought about that. And that's kind of, I think that's kind of the way the racing world goes these days, and even back in my time, is that you're so busy looking out to the future, and you don't really even enjoy the moments. When you go to victory lane, it's like, okay, that was fun, but we didn't really get a chance to really enjoy it because the next morning we're testing or somewhere else on another racetrack. So I think it doesn't really sink into your career starts to wind down and you get near the end of it. And then when you do retire, of course, you're not going to be back in the driver's seat anymore. So the things that you really, now it's time to go and reflect on the career that you actually put together for 32 years. So I'm enjoying it a lot more than I would have had I been younger and gotten in.
So, Ricky, I remember us sitting in a coffee shop in Cornelius, North Carolina, many years ago, and you said when you hung up the driving shoes that you wanted to step away for a little bit, give it a little bit of break. But I think a lot of guys we talk to, you can never really get NASCAR out of your blood. Is it really cool for you now to be back involved and maybe see some people you haven't seen for a while and really catch the NASCAR bug again?
Well, it's kind of working that way, John. I've stepped aside. I think my last race was 2007. So we're getting up. I don't know, quite a few years ago since I retired, and I had not been back to a racetrack until 2 years ago. They had a neat little get together at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway where it was an unusual photo that they arranged, and it was during the NASCAR IndyCar joint weekend. And I happened to be on my way home with a friend of mine from the Oshkosh, Wisconsin Air Show, and happened to be literally an hour from Indianapolis Motor Speedway the night before they actually wanted us to make it to the Speedway. And what it was is they were going to have the yard of bricks. They were going to line up they had all the Indy 500 drivers that were still living today. Of course, you got to remember that dates back to early 1900s, so a lot of them obviously had passed away. But they also had the NASCAR Brickyard 400 winners there. So that was a really neat weekend, and it just worked out perfect. We happened to be in the neighborhood when I got the call from Doug Bowles at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So, but that's been the first time I've been back to the racetrack, and it's not really that. I miss it. I miss it a lot. I miss the people. I miss the fans. But if I were to show up at a racetrack, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, or this upcoming weekend, they don't really have time for the retired people. Those guys are busy. They're worried about, the present, and they're trying to get things ready to go. There's not a whole lot of people I would actually even know in the garage area anymore.
So, Ricky, when you were going through your amazing Ironman streak, for so many years you were involved in it, you saw so many different eras. When you watch a race these days, a lot of people that have left the sport are looking back right now and telling us they feel as if the competition level is great, the product on the track is great. You're in a unique position to comment on this. What do you think about the product on the track right now?
Well, I think I need to go back. I started racing in the Cup Series when I was 18, and that was in 1975, and virtually came in with zero race car experience. I'd never been in a race car seat until I sat in a seat at Rockingham, North Carolina, lined up against the greats, Richard Petty, Bobby Allison, K.L. Yarborough, Buddy Baker. I mean, the list, Allison brothers, the list goes on and on. But so I had a chance, a unique opportunity. I saw racing for 32 years. I think the only one that had more race starts than I did was Richard Petty. So I got a chance to see, some of the old timer, the legends, and race against them. And then I made it all the way up through the years where, Jeff Gordon was a teammate with me when I was at Hendricks Motorsports. So I saw Jeff, I saw Dale Jr. I raced against these guys. I raced against Jimmy Johnson. So I had a really wide uh, view of the sport. And you asked a question a while ago, what do I think of the racing? I think the racing, I'm seeing more side by side racing. I'm seeing more racing all the way through the field. Back in some of the times that I was racing in that era, at least early on, the competition was divided up. You had some really good cars, and you had guys that were capable of doing better, but they couldn't find sponsorship dollars or what have you. So they were doing the best they could with what they had to work with. Unlike today, where these things are all multi-million-dollar organizations with all the funding. I'm sure they could all use more money. That's just the racer mentality. You can always use more because you put it back in that race car. But I'm not really sure why the following is not even bigger yet today. I know they've gone through some growth periods where the racing wasn't as good, and they were trying to figure out, coming up with a car situation where they could draft close together, not get into the aero push issues and things of that nature. And appears that they've got that thing whipped now, this car they've got now. Again, I don't tune in every weekend. I can't really give you a real good evaluation of, my opinion, because it's not going to be worth anything to begin with. But I don't tune in every weekend.
Yeah, it is,
But
Ricky.
there's a lot of talent, out there.
Yeah. Now, Ricky, you also are in a very unique position to be able to comment on what's going on right now with ownership. You had a family-run operation. You guys showed the guts to go out on your own and do your own thing. But you were one of the people we often talk about that didn't have that charter, that didn't have something to fall back on. When you look at the charter system today, how these charters are handed out, do you pay much attention to it, or have you looked at that, and do you have a feeling on it?
Well, I don't think I'm educated enough to give you a good opinion of it. I will say that I like the concept. I don't know how the logistics work. I don't know what the teams are paying for that charter. I can just tell you that we spent, a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of sleepless nights building our own organization up. And when I happened to catch it at a good time when I started the organization back in the mid '90s. But what became of it is just in that short period of time, I think we're in business 6 years. I actually won 25% of my races driving for myself as a car owner. But it was changing so drastically during that period that we began with a good sponsorship from Tide brand, Procter and Gamble, and we had equal money to some of the best teams. And I look back and I'm thinking, man, we were able to beat Hendricks and Roush and Yates on given days, and it was pretty amazing that we could even do that. But then the money curve started getting steeper and steeper, and we just didn't do a good job raising the money. And it just takes so much money to run these things; they just eat money alive. So I ended up making a decision. I can ride this thing out, go bankrupt, or I can go back in
Yeah.
the driver's seat and try to make it again as a driver. But the idea about the franchise, it gives a car owner, like a good example. When we shut our operation down, we auctioned all the equipment off, sold everything, and for the amount of money we spent, we probably got no more than 10 cents on the dollar back.
Wow.
So with a franchise, it protects people that spend a lot of money, maybe their life savings or the money that they're able to raise when they do shut things down or they decide to leave the sport for whatever reason. Their organization is worth something. They'll get some money back. At least get their money back is what they hope to do.
So, Ricky, what do you do these days? What do you do for fun? I know you said something about going to an air show. What's a day like for Ricky these days?
Well, today I was rummaging through the attic, trying to pick a cool day to do it, getting things together for the NASCAR Hall of Fame, trying to find old trophies and things. We sat down and came up with a list of items we think would be pretty cool for the fans to see in my exhibit. So I've been digging through that. Linda's been helping me. So kind of a work day, really. But our typical day is it's very non-eventful. I mean, it probably starts off with a cup of coffee at our local coffee shop, and Lynn and I sit down and we both read the news. And a lot of times she goes one direction, I go another. I find myself more probably hanging around airports today than I used to, and I've got a little airplane I just kind of put around in and go visit some friends and things of that nature. But I do kind of whatever I feel like doing, which is
That's
I've
great.
never had control over my schedule. When you're racing, your schedule, I mean, almost hourly is dictated, by sponsors, by the team requirements and practice and testing and racing and just uh, very little time to share with your family and friends. So I'm catching up on all that right now.
That is great. I'm glad to hear that. Ricky, have you given much thought to your acceptance speech? What you're going to say when you have the opportunity?
I haven't got a clue, John. Matter of fact, I'll probably be knocking on your door. I think
Okay.
you could be a great speechwriter. You are the media, so I might be leaning on you to help me out
I'll
because
be glad to help.
I've always been, I've always just gotten up and with a couple of bullet points and just sort of run my mouth. The next thing you know, the time is up. But this is going to be something special. I want to make sure I include everybody and don't miss anybody that was instrumental. And my career is a little different, actually quite a bit different than most of the guys that have been through the Hall of Fame, especially the more modern driver, say like a Jimmy Johnson. They came in with one race team and they stayed put the whole time, which was, man, that would have been great if that had worked for me. But during my era, drivers moved around every couple of years, 2 or 3 years. So at the time, it was, you're always constantly in a rebuild mode and getting to know the new team and the new crew chief and the new engineer. And it was always, getting to know you, but you had to do it quickly because you're hired to come in there and win races. And so I didn't want to let anybody down, but it would have been a little bit simpler if you could stay in one place and learn everybody's personalities and things of that nature. But it just didn't work out that way. But one benefit came out of it, and I really appreciate it now, is I had the chance to drive for 5 Hall of Fame car owners.
Wow.
And maybe you could argue the couple of the guys that I drove for should also be in there. But to be able to have driven for 5 Hall of Fame car owners is it's something I wouldn't trade for anything. And and you look at the great career of Jeff Gordon or a Jimmy Johnson or some of the more recent guys, the career that they had, they can't say that. They don't have the benefit of being able to ever say that they actually had the chance to meet and talk and learn from all these Hall of Fame car owners like I did. And I wouldn't trade that for anything now looking back.
Well, Ricky, I want to say once again, congratulations on the Hall of Fame nomination. It's so well deserved. And on behalf of myself and our photographer, Clint Wiles, there were many years where we were chasing you around the garage area, and you were always a pleasure to talk to, always a fierce competitor, and just real pleasure to be around. And want to say congratulations on everything, and love the fact that you're doing what you want to do right now.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate it. Thanks again.